The chime of crystal was the only sound in the cavernous dining room. My mother, Beatrice, lifted her water glass, the baccarat catching the light from the Schonbeck chandelier. Every object in this room had a pedigree, a history, a price tag. I, Olivia, felt like the one piece of IKEA furniture that had somehow wandered into a museum. Olivia, darling, my mother began, her voice a carefully modulated instrument of control. Your father and I have made a decision about your grandmother's estate. My father, Richard, cleared his throat, a sound that had silenced boardrooms. We've decided that the entirety of the $2 million trust will be signed over to your brother, Liam. He's at a critical juncture. Liam, seated across from me, had the decency to look faintly embarrassed, but it was quickly swallowed by a familiar sense of entitlement. His critical juncture was his latest venture, Sovereign Man Media, a podcast network dedicated to, and I quote, financial freedom for the alpha male. His target demographic was boys who thought financial planning meant choosing which energy drink to buy with their allowance. His last venture showed such promise, my mother continued, her gaze skittering away from mine to focus on a perfectly arranged orchid centerpiece. He just needs a proper head start. You, on the other hand. She finally looked at me, her smile thin and pitying. You're so established with your little science projects. So fiercely independent. You don't need it. Liam, well, he needs to find his footing. It's only fair. Fair. The word hung in the air, a spark landing on the gas trail of a lifetime of injustices. I was 8 years old, watching Liam get a brand new, top-of-the-line bicycle for his birthday while I was given his old, rusted one with the admonishment, be reasonable, Olivia, it's perfectly good. I was 17, hearing my parents explain that my college fund had been reallocated to cover Liam's third-year tuition at an expensive private college after he'd been placed on academic probation. I took out loans for state school. I was 25, listening to my father praise Liam's entrepreneurial spirit as my parents funded his first failed podcast, while I worked 80-hour weeks in a lab, surviving on instant noodles to fund my research. My company, Ether Diagnostics, was on the verge of revolutionizing early cancer detection with a cheap, portable blood analyzer. But to them, it was a little science project. The anger I felt didn't boil. It didn't steam. It flash-froze into a diamond-hard core of absolute clarity. I looked at their three faces, my father's unyielding resolve, my mother's performative concern, my brother's smug anticipation. They were a closed circuit, and I had never been part of the wiring. I smiled. It was a serene, placid expression that reached my eyes, making them crinkle at the corners. I had practiced it for this moment. Of course, I said, my voice as smooth and cool as the marble floor. I understand completely. It's only fair that Liam gets the help he needs. The collective exhalation of relief was palpable. My mother's shoulders, held in a permanent state of tense elegance, dropped 2 inches. My father gave a single, satisfied nod. Liam's smirk widened into a victor's grin. They had braced for a scene, for tears, for arguments, for messy emotions. My calm acquiescence was a gift, and they accepted it without a second thought, without a shred of suspicion. What they didn't know was that the $2 million trust was a decoy. A shiny bauble my grandmother, Eleanor, had left in her will to keep the vultures pacified. The real inheritance, the $40 million fortune she had built herself after my grandfather's death, was hidden in a labyrinth of offshore accounts and a shell corporation named Nightingale Holdings. She had given me the keys 5 years ago, during our weekly tea sessions that my parents dismissed as me humoring the old bat. Your parents see money as a monument to their own status, she'd whispered, her gnarled hand patting mine. Liam will piss it away on vanity projects. But you, my Nightingale, you understand. Money isn't a monument. It's a weapon. Wait. Wait until they show you who they are. Then, load the gun and fire. I had just pulled the trigger. The moment a quiet woman stops asking and starts taking is the most powerful force in the world. If you're feeling the tension build, you know the revenge is going to be exquisite. Don't go anywhere. Like and subscribe to Wisdom to Revenge to make sure you see the moment their world ignites. I drove away from my parents' estate, the iron gates closing behind me like the end of a chapter. Instead of going home to my apartment, I drove to the cemetery. I sat on the bench in front of my grandmother's sleek, black granite headstone. It's time, Gran, I said to the quiet air. I pulled a cheap, untraceable burner phone from my glove compartment. I had drafted the email weeks ago. It was addressed to only 2 people, my ruthlessly efficient lawyer, Ms. Chen, and my discreet financial manager, Mr. Davies. The subject line was one word, Nightingale. It was the code. The signal to initiate the sequence my grandmother and I had meticulously designed. Project Nightingale was not just about taking money, it was about systematically dismantling the pillars of their identity. My father's pride and joy wasn't the family name, it was Premier Motors, the luxury car dealership he had built from the ground up. He didn't own the building, he'd leased it for 30 years from a faceless LLC. At 9:01 a.m., he received a letter from a new corporate entity, Ethelstan Properties. The letter informed him that the property had been purchased and his lease was terminated in 90 days to make way for significant redevelopment. Enclosed was an offer to purchase his business for 10 cents on the dollar. The tone was cold, corporate, and utterly final. My father's first call to me was apoplectic. "Olivia. It's a hostile takeover. A sham. These corporate raiders. I'll fight this in court. I'll ruin them." "I'm so sorry, Dad," I said, sipping my single-origin pour-over coffee. "That sounds incredibly stressful. Have you talked to Liam? Maybe his media connections can help generate some positive press." I could almost hear his blood pressure spike through the phone. My mother's identity was the Winthrop Foundation. As the chair of the board, it was her throne room, the source of her social power. At 10:15 a.m., every member of the board received an anonymous, meticulously sourced dossier. It detailed years of creative accounting, donor funds subtly redirected to cover administrative costs that suspiciously included my mother's personal stylist, her luxury spa memberships, and the lease on her Mercedes. The source was a concerned whistleblower. Attached was a letter from a powerful law firm, retained by an anonymous donor who had just gifted the foundation $20 million. The sole condition was the immediate removal of the current chair for gross financial mismanagement. My mother's call was a hysterical whisper. "Olivia, it's a witch hunt. Someone is trying to destroy me. My reputation." "That's awful, Mother," I replied, scrolling through the real-time feed of the board's emergency vote happening via email. "But I'm sure you have nothing to hide. The truth will come out." I ended the call as the final vote came in, officially ousting her. Liam's entire existence was his online persona. Sovereign Man Media was his kingdom. At 11:30 a.m., it collapsed. Simultaneously, his Patreon, YouTube channel, and podcast hosting service were hit with a barrage of copyright infringement claims from a catalog of music and media owned by a shell company I controlled through Nightingale Holdings. The claims were backed by a team of the most aggressive intellectual property lawyers money could buy. His channels were demonetized, his content flagged, and his accounts suspended before he could even finish his morning protein shake. His text to me was a single, panicked word: help. I didn't reply. The crescendo came just after 2 p.m. My phone rang. It was the family lawyer, Mr. Sterling. His voice, usually oozing unctuous confidence, was thin and reedy, a balloon losing air. "Olivia," he stammered. "Ethelstan Properties, the shell corporation that bought your father's building, the legal trail, it's a Russian doll of holding companies." I remained silent, letting him flounder. We finally pierced the last corporate veil. The ultimate beneficiary, it's listed as the Nightingale Trust. He took a shaky, ragged breath. I could picture him, sweat beading on his brow, in his oak-paneled office. "Your grandmother, her pet name for you, was Nightingale. Tell me, for God's sake, Olivia, just tell me you didn't orchestrate this entire annihilation." I let the silence stretch, a vast, empty plain where their world had once been. I could hear his desperate breathing on the other end of the line. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice as calm as the eye of a hurricane. "I'm a scientist. I deal in facts and evidence. And the fact is, my family is reaping the consequences of a lifetime of very poor investments. I suggest you advise them to be more reasonable." I ended the call and powered off the phone. I would never use it again. In the end, I didn't just take their money. I took everything. My father, unable to relocate his dealership in time, was forced to sell the business for a pittance. My mother, a social pariah, now spends her days in a condo she can barely afford, her name mud in the only circles that ever mattered to her. Liam, stripped of his platform and his funding, finally got a real job, as a sales manager at a cell phone kiosk in the mall. The irony was not lost on me. They tried to reach me, of course. They showed up at my lab, sent pleading emails, left sobbing voicemails. My security team now has their pictures. The emails are auto-deleted. The voicemail box is full. The greatest revenge isn't the ruin I orchestrated. It's the profound peace I found on the other side. It's walking through the new Eleanor V. Rossi Memorial Wing at Ether Diagnostics, knowing that my grandmother's legacy isn't a dusty trust fund but a living, breathing force for good. It's the knowledge that we, the two women they underestimated, the old bat and the girl with the little science projects, outmaneuvered them so completely that they never saw it coming. They wanted to give my inheritance to my brother for a head start. So I took their entire world, their status, their pride, and their future, and I used it to build a legacy they can never be part of. And it was, as my mother always said, only fair. When a quiet woman has had enough, the ground shakes. If this story of a granddaughter's ultimate retaliation resonated with you, you need to join our community. Subscribe to Wisdom to Revenge and hit the notification bell for more stories about turning your hidden strength into undeniable victory. Your silence is your greatest weapon until you choose to speak.